Hello everyone, this is V-Man, and it's finally here, the nerf patch. After the last patch really strangely said, oh, we're gonna wait until next patch to nerf a bunch of stuff that needs it, instead of just nerfing it in that patch when they knew stuff needed nerfed. Well, now we have the actual nerf patch, apparently. So I'm really curious what it's actually going to do. So, yeah. It is a little weird that the notes are coming 3 days before the season ends instead of 2, but that's probably just because of the season ending on a Saturday in the States or Sunday in Japan and the East in general. So that explains it, I think. Anyway, enough preamble. Amiibo stuff, cool. Connectivity. Improved connectivity programming to shorten the time between sent data being received by recipients and the response that it is then returned. An average reduction of approximately 0.4/60ths of a second. So not even a frame, not even half of a frame, but I mean, if it's actually something that works, that would be really neat. In situations such as dealing damage, an average reduction of approximately 3.4/60ths of a second is expected. Now that's actually significant. I wonder if I'll be able to notice this in actual games. But we'll see. But here's the stuff I'm really looking for. Squeezer and Foil Squeezer slowed the speed of the first shot fired after pressing the ZR button by approximately 5% and shortened its flight distance. So its shot velocity is slower, and its range is worse. And it also strafes slower. I mean, Squeezer does need nerfs. Is this harsh? I don't think it's too harsh, but it's definitely up there. I mean, a 5% range reduction. Oh, wait. The shot velocity is 5% less. It just says shortened its flight distance. It doesn't specify, but I'm guessing it's also 5%. I mean, a range nerf on Squeezer is a bit significant, I think. And the movement speed, I mean, it's gonna hurt, but I don't think it's the worst thing ever. But all this added up, especially if there's some other nerfs to the kit, like if there's a splash wall or points for special nerf coming up, that'll really hurt Squeezer. But I mean, it already has enough trouble getting Zukas, and I guess Screen too. Overall, I think this is a good change, but I still was hoping for a fire rate nerf, so that would make it so that it can't spam shots as much, and also means that you don't need to mash as much for it to be as effective, which I think would have been a good change, but this is good too. Alright. I need to make sure I don't spoil myself. Range Blaster. Decrease the radius of the damage explosion by approximately 6%. Yep, there it is. I'm guessing that's from 3.5 to 3.3 units, just like the other blasters. That's nice. I like that. And decrease the radius of the ink splatter at the point of impact with the floor or wall, or when detonating midair by approximately 9%. So it paints worse too. Sheesh. I mean, it's a range blaster. It's not exactly getting a lot of paint to begin with, so this is going to hurt it a lot more. Honestly, this might be the bigger nerf, because this, you do need to be a little more accurate for your indirects, or a little closer if they're trying to get away, but it's not that big of a deal. This might actually be a bigger deal. But I guess it only impacts the end, so where it actually explodes or hits the terrain and not the trail between you and that point. So maybe it's not as impactful as it first appears. Overall, I think this is a fair nerf. It's not too over the top. I'm sure that the range blaster players will survive this. Snipe Riders. Slightly decrease the width of spray droplets created by shots. This is pretty much exactly what it needed, because for a charger, it's really good at getting a lot of paint, especially for the one that gets the tacticoolers, which is the one that you really care about. How much slightly is, I don't know. It doesn't say, obviously, but I'm guessing it'll probably be enough to effectively mean it's like 220p, except, of course, the 5H kit has sprinklers. That kind of makes up for it. Hopefully if this is as slight as it says, then it's a little bit more impactful, or there's something else, because otherwise the 5H kit's still going to be pretty dominant and top level. But it's a good start. Sloshers. Increase ink consumption by 9%. Sheesh. Yeah, I can see it for the regular Slosher. Slosher Deco didn't really need it, but that's mostly just because it's stuck with Dart. Dart was burst bomb levels of good for the weapon, then yeah, this would definitely need it, but it's not. So rip Slosher Deco players, but the regular Slosher is the more relevant one, and this is definitely going to hurt it. Again, I don't think it's enough to really shove it out of the meta, but it's going to feel like it is worse. So you're probably going to want to run a little bit of Ink Saver or Ink Recovery for this now. Heavy Edit Splatling. Slightly decrease the number of spray droplets created by shots. The frequency of inking occurring at the player's feet is unchanged. Okay, I mean, Heavy Edit is somewhat strong. I wouldn't exactly call it a top tier, but it is kinda up there-ish. Not really. So I can kinda see it. I guess how slight this slightly is gonna dictate how much this actually impacts it. But okay, I guess. It does get its special really fast, so it barely ever runs out of ink, so I guess that's fair enough. Well strings. Decrease the radius of the ink splatter that occurs upon impact by approximately 8%. That I like, because I am a filthy casual, I guess, because I always get stuck when this weapon's shots land directly next to me, and I can't move fast enough to get away from them before they explode. So if I get stuck less and can swim away before they explode and kill me in one shot, even though they didn't hit me directly, that is a win in my book. Even though this weapon isn't exactly meta, it is very annoying, so I welcome this change. Oof, no sub-weapon changes again. Trizuka. Increase the amount of time between activation and becoming able to fire by approximately 1/12 of a second, which is 5 frames. Which is good. That's the sort of nerf that this needed, but only 5 frames. That's not a lot, actually. It's not as much as Splatoon 1 Trizuka, I don't think, still. Because I think that would have needed to be another at least 10, maybe like 20, if I'm remembering correctly. So yeah, better than nothing, but I mean, it's sort of fallen out of favor now, especially with some of the meta developments and the big bubbler changes making it less effective. Still a good change, I think, overall. Alright, points for special. Custom range is going to 210, even though the main weapon got a paint nerf anyway. And the Slosher is going to 210, even though it also got a ink efficiency nerf. So, cool. I can't say I'm disappointed by that, but I'm just kind of weirded out that there aren't other things in here too. Alright. Some other stuff. And X battles made it less likely for players to be matched again with players they just encountered. But it's still possible. Made it so that Japan and regions near it cannot select Tentatek division when selecting an X battle division. That's kind of bizarre, actually. If anything, you'd feel like this would go the other way around. They'd make it so that people in the States and the rest of North America wouldn't be able to select Takaroka division. Because I'm pretty sure Takaroka division gets way more people than Tentatek. So, if anything, they should try to encourage people to pick the Tentatek division instead of not pick it. But if it helps matchmaking so that I don't have as many halfway across the globe Japanese players slowing down the matches just because of distance, fair enough, I guess. Splatfest changes made it possible for players who achieved the ruler or higher to board the Splatfest float. So I guess this just affects Splatfest in general and not specifically the Grand Festival. Fair enough, I guess. Although it makes it a little less special. Players can choose additional poses from atop the Splatfest float. Cool. I don't really care much about this stuff. Made it possible to select a deep cut pose. I wonder if it reflects the specific team that you chose. So if you picked Shiver's team, for example, you can only strike Shiver's pose. Made it possible for players who have downloaded the expansion pass to select Squid Sisters and off the hook poses. Neat. Added data for a special big run. Added an item that can be exchanged for fish scales. Just one. Just one. I don't know if we really need any more because I'm definitely not going to be able to get everything. Even if I'm just focusing on the gear, it's going to take me a long time to get them all. Made it so you can get capsules containing fish scales from the reward meter. I'm guessing you won't get them very frequently, but it is cool that you can get them. I guess that sort of addresses the complaint of, oh, we don't get enough fish scales and everything's too expensive, which, I mean, it kind of is, but this definitely helps. And the gear you can get from the reward meter will now change each shift rather than each month because they don't have any new pieces of gear for every month, so they're just going to rotate the old ones. Fine. Other changes. Half as much XP needed to get 1 star. Let's see, weapons that had 5,000 XP or okay, so if you have 5,000, you still need to play with the weapon one more time to get the Sheldon license, which makes sense. I don't know how I feel about this, actually. I mean, I have been trying to get all the weapons 1-starred, and I still have about 35 left. And I guess this will make it easier, but also, it's not as big of a deal anymore. It felt like you actually kind of earned it if you got to 10, but it also did take a while, so I guess I'm kind of neutral on this one. And changed the design of some splash tag banners. I wonder who caused that one. They who shall not be named. Focuses on adding data for the big run, improving connectivity, and making adjustments to battles. We've reduced the time it takes to convey the things that happen in game to other players by optimizing the game's internal processing. I don't know why it took them 2 years that they could have done this, but better late than never, I guess. We made changes that we previously notified you about to lower the performance of some selected weapons. I don't think there was a single buff this patch, which is very unusual, but fine, I guess. For multiplayer balance, wait, that's just what I read. The Squeezer and Foil Squeezer were intended as weapons that are difficult to master but can produce high performance when mastered. However, because their shots could reach from a long distance and because they had high movement speed while firing, it was easy to make a lot of attempts, which made it easier to make up for the control difficulty. You mean the mashing requirement that makes it so that some people just can't play the weapon? I mean, I can't really mash that well, but at least I can kind of functionally play the weapon. Some people just cannot play this weapon, and that was not addressed at all, which sucks. For that reason, their performance has been reduced. Regardless of the reason and the method, I do appreciate that Squeezer got nerfed. That thing's kind of annoying. For the Range Blaster and Custom Range Blaster, by reducing the area of the attack and inking due to the explosion, we maintain the property of dealing damage to opponents you aim for carefully while reducing the property that deals damage to opponents whose positions are not precisely known, which I think is perfectly fair, because there's so many times where I feel like I just get hit by a completely random range blaster shot that feels like it shouldn't hit me, but I'm sure that will continue because I have a skill issue. Our intentions with both weapons is to make it so that players who specialize in other weapons are not forced to switch to these weapons, while also maintaining a level of performance sufficient enough for players who already specialize in these weapons to continue to fight using them. Which I think is mostly true for the range blaster, because if you're good at getting directs or even getting indirects, you probably won't be affected too much except for the paint. The Squeezer, I feel like if you're a really good Squeezer player, this still will hurt you because you can't move as much and you can't fire as far and you have to lead your shots a little bit because the shot velocity is slower. There's definitely going to be some learning and relearning for the Squeezer players. For the Snipe Riders, we slightly reduce their ability to maintain inking status from a distance, which is perfectly fair. While the Slosher, Slosher Deco, and Order Slosher Replica, we have adjusted performance at points required for specials to make them like many other sloshers in that they have high instantaneous fighting and inking power, but when fighting with them continuously over time, it's easy to run out of ink. Is this last part actually true for all sloshers? I mean, it says many other sloshers. So, yeah, try Slosher, you're exempt from this, I guess. The heavy edit Splatlings changed the aspect of them where, in comparison to other Splatlings with shorter flying distances, they were very effective at maintaining ink coverage when exchanging fire. Fair enough, I guess. The well strings, they paint worse. I didn't even think about how it's, they paint worse. I just thought, I'm going to get trapped less, but I guess less paint in general is... Actually, was that even a particular strength of the weapon? I mean, I guess it wasn't bad, but I never really heard people say, oh man, the well string's so overpowered because it paints a lot. Maybe I missed that part. With the Trizuka, we made changes to increase the opening when used on an opponent at close range, and also slightly increase the time to find a safe place to take cover after hearing an opponent's Trizuka activation noise, which I think is good. It does hurt the Panic Zuka too, so yeah, I don't really have any complaints about that one, other than maybe it deserved a little more. We'll see where it lands. And we have changes that Japan and regions nearby it cannot participate in the Tanatech division. Doesn't affect me directly, I guess. Of the total number of players in Japan and nearby regions, an extremely small percent select Tentactech division, despite living in Japan or nearby regions. However, we have made this change because it has reached a percentage that has a negative effect on rankings among players participating in the Tentactech division. The next update will focus on adding data for the Grand Festival, so there is going to be another patch soon. Probably not a balance patch like this one, but we do know that there will be another one. Alright, so I'm going to look through the bug fixes, and if I find anything noteworthy, I'll tack it on immediately after this section. Otherwise, I'm going to end with my closing thoughts. Alright, I looked through the bug fixes, and the only one that really caught my attention was this last one in the salmon run section. And that would be where sometimes when you finished a job and started a second one, it just would get stuck and you'd need to hold down the minus button to leave and then join a new one for it to actually progress, which was super annoying. And I guess they fixed it, which, good. Thank you. Hopefully that's not an issue anymore, because that was starting to get on my nerves. Alright, anyway, so final thoughts. Overall, I think as a nerf-focused patch, they did pretty good. I do like this, if this is actually meaningful, especially this, because it's multiple frames faster, which is really important for a game like this. But as far as the actual weapon changes, I think the Squeezer change is decent, the Range Blaster change is good, Snipe Rider change is good, but maybe not enough. The Slosher might honestly be gutted because of the ink efficiency and the slower dry strikes. Heavy Edit's probably fine. This is probably fine. This is better. But I think really the main thing is there's some weapons that they didn't change that they probably should have. Specifically 52. There's nothing on here for 52 Gal, even though it's definitely one of the stronger weapons. There's no main weapon nerf, like an ink efficiency nerf that it probably should get. There's no splash wall nerf, which would have doubled for the Squeezer, which would have been nice. And there's no killer whale nerf, not that it really needs one. But there's also no points for special nerf. So 52 is definitely going to maintain relevance, and it might actually take some of the role of Squeezer as the sort of quick kill, less ink efficient, but still really powerful shooter. Especially since Squeezer's getting extra nerfed. They also didn't nerf Stamper, which is a little surprising, but I guess I can't be too upset because I like Stamper. But it is kind of surprising. So overall, I think this will definitely shake the meta. Will it improve the meta? I don't know for sure. But I guess as long as the Snipe Rider isn't quite as strong as it was before, it gives the other cooler weapons, except this one apparently, some time, some space to breathe, then I guess that'll help the competitive scene. And this annoying weapon is kind of toned back. This annoying weapon is kind of toned back. Hopefully this will lead to a little more variety in the meta. And overall, I wish there were some buffs, but I do not mind a nerf-focused patch, because if you only do buffs, like they've mostly been doing for a lot of the game's lifespan, including Splatoon 2 to a degree, then you have what's called power creep, and I do not want that. So I think this is a good way to balance out all of the buff patches that they've done recently. Even though I do wish there were a couple of buffs to some of the weaker weapons. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Overall, I'll give it maybe a 6.5 out of 10. So definitely a step in the right direction, but it's not going to completely upend everything, I think. Especially if you're not a top level player. But still pretty good. Alright. Anyway, that's all for this one. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.